Hi guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today doing another video. The subject of today's video is going to again be Survivor focused. I did a retrospective on the final tribal council with Millennials versus Gen X, and I also did it with, I believe, Game Changers, and I did it with what was it, South Pacific. But I am going to do one now with Survivor Cagayan season 28. This video is going to be focused on whether Wu really had a shot at winning final tribal versus Tony specifically. So I think, as a bit of background here, it's pretty common knowledge, and there are spoilers for season 28. So if you haven't seen it, um, you should watch the season before watching this video, or be willing to hear spoilers. So at the end of season 28, it's considered a very good season. We get down to the final three, and Wu has won immunity. He has been in an alliance with Tony all season, but Tony's seen as basically the biggest threat left on the show. It's Tony, Wu, and Cass. Cass has essentially just been sliding by, not since the merge episode, hadn't really done much, just been an annoying decoy basically most of the season. Um, if she would have got to the end versus either of those two guys, most people would have assumed that she would lose because number one, she didn't do that much. She was a flipper where she was kind of betraying different alliances and stuff like that. She also socially wasn't that good, and that um, Tony kind of took the role of villain on the season because he attacked a few people in certain ways, including Cass. But Cass was kind of a villain herself in that really nobody liked her. Um, and so basically, if Wu or Tony would have taken Cass to the finale, they would have beaten her. It's widely accepted. But Wu had final immunity, and he decided to take Tony over um, over Cass. And ultimately, Wu lost the season, and Tony was seen as the opposite of an underdog, so I guess a heavy favorite. And it came to fruition, and he won. And he was one of the first people to play a really cutthroat season, to betray people, to play a to to play a backstabber and to win the game. We'd seen it previously with other people in other seasons, and typically when that happens, the player doesn't win because people resent them for playing such a cutthroat style. And so they give it to the other person, but that didn't happen here. This was really the first time we saw a very cutthroat player actually win, and that was Tony. And so I'm going to dive a bit into what Wu's thought process was in taking Tony to the finale, and then kind of break down their merits for each of them winning and why you could make the case for Wu to win. So Wu brought Tony because he had been loyal to him all season, and he thought in the eyes of the jury it would look bad to backstab his closest ally, and that he would come off really bad socially to get rid of his biggest ally, and that's a huge betrayal, and it would be very dishonorable, so to speak. Um, I get where Wu's coming from here, and I think if Wu were playing Survivor in the first 10 to maybe 12 seasons, that would have been a factor. But I think we were at a stage in Survivor where people valued making the right strategic decision over playing a clean game. And so what I mean by that is, if you look, I'd say like the last person to win based off of playing a clean game was the winner of season 18 of Survivor. I won't say who won, but I think that person, a big factor in them winning was them being able to say that they played honorably, so to speak. Um, and so I think that ship had just kind of sailed. People were really into strategy by this point, both as fans and as the players themselves. So I think Wu was kind of banking on this. I played a super clean game. I myself didn't backstab anybody. I left that all to Tony, and so my hands are clean. And he also won a lot of challenges, so he had that angle as far as he was a really good player of the game. But I think um, the problem for him was he just lacked any sort of strategy. And when you look at Survivor, there's really three factors in my book. There's how you perform in challenges, which is like equal weight to these other two, but probably the least the least beneficial when pleading your case to a jury. So there's winning challenges, there's your strategic game as far as how you manipulate others and situations in order to get certain people voted off, and then there's the social game, which is basically like very hard to distinguish between the strategic game, but the social game is basically like how you handle people. Like when you vote them off, do you like make fun of them for it and laugh when they have to pick up their torch and get eliminated, or do you say I'm so sorry? When you when you talk to people, are you doing it in a way that comes off as you're trying to be their friend, or do you do it in a way that you seem like you're trying to use them? Um, just basically how you treat people, because ultimately the jury votes based on both your resume and how you interacted with others. Like literally jury votes have been decided on somebody saying, "I think that you are a self-centered person. I don't think you cared about the jury as much as the other two candidates up there. I won't vote for you." That was a jury member's assessment of somebody once, that um, that they thought that the person who they were questioning was basically um, really narcissistic, and so because of that, they didn't vote for them. So basically, your personality itself and your interest in others is very impactful, and Wu definitely had that going for him. He was kind, he was sweet, um, he had regard for others, things that Tony basically didn't have during this season. Um, and so you look at their resumes and you say, okay, Wu was more physically dominant in challenges. Wu was better socially in that he handled people better, and he basically was kinder and better in treating people and handling them. But Tony was better strategically. So you'd think 2 out of 3 Wu should win this. But as I say, as Survivor's progress, strategy has been more heavily weighted, very much so, in later seasons. And so despite Wu having all those things going for him, he basically displayed terrible strategy in that he brought the biggest threat in the game to the end with him when he had such a golden opportunity to take him out. And Spencer's jury speech really illuminates this in that, like, Wu did some good things, but Wu also basically made one of the dumbest moves in Survivor history, bringing the overwhelming favorite to the finals with him when he could have easily gotten rid of him and have brought in a goat to the finale with him. And if you're unfamiliar with a goat, that's basically somebody who doesn't really have a shot of winning. Um, and so I think if Wu would have crafted his argument better, I think he could have made it more even in that I don't think he played up his social game enough. I think he just kept saying, I played honorably. I played honorably. The reason I brought Tony is I played honorably. If he would have more crafted an argument like um, I was the godfather. Tony had to do all the dirty work. Everybody's hated Tony for it. I got to sit back and take none of the flack because Tony was willing to be the sacrificial lamb. If he would have angled it more like that rather than when people were like, "Were you in on the decisions with Tony?" Wu said things more to the effect of like, yeah. Whereas like if he would have owned it more and said like, "Yes, this was a joint effort and I just angled to have Tony take more flack than I did," people would have responded to that better than him basically just like ignoring strategy and saying like, I played honorably and let's not talk about strategy because I didn't have any. He maybe it's just because he's not that intelligent of a player. You know, he seems like a really nice guy, but he also didn't seem like a he seemed kind of like a dumb jock a little bit. Um, and so I think maybe he just was lacking that aspect of the game to think analytically about how people were going to perceive him. But yeah, I think if you just look at Wu's resume, he could have had a case to win this season, but I think his jury management was relatively bad in that he didn't really hit on the points that he should have, as in he basically talked up honor, which was kind of a subset of his social game, and he talked on challenges a little bit, but if he would have played himself up and said like I was dominant physically, I didn't make any enemies in this game. I treated you all with high regard, which is something Tony didn't do, and I never lied to your guys' faces. Tony did that all the time, so I really did play with honor, and strategically, I was a part of your backstabbings, but I angled myself in a way to make sure that I was never the one taking the heat for sending people home. So I think altogether I deserve to win. If Wu would have made basically that exact argument, I think that he could have won this season. But basically, he sat back, he didn't defend himself very well, and he allowed Tony to answer a lot of questions really well without really um, contesting anything that Tony had to say in his own favor. So I think Wu could have won the season, but he just was not good at jury management. And I think if he would have played in an earlier era, he would have had a really good shot of winning because I think things like honor and social gameplay were valued a lot more earlier on in the show than they are now. So there you have it, guys. Those are my thoughts on Wu potentially winning Survivor Cagayan. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you next time.